Okay, let's work on creating ideas. So I want to make sure that the user is logged in before they can perform this action. So let's start there. So let's go to our app played. I believe it's in there. And we have this text here. So let's change this text based on if they're logged in or not. So let's use the auth directive. And we can also use else here. So this case right here is if they're logged in. But if not, let's say, please log in to create an idea. Okay. So now, since we're not logged in, we should see that text. Okay. So let's do the same thing for the form. If they are logged in, show the form, but if not, show a login button. So we can do the same thing here. Let's say auth and end auth, and we'll grab the form and put it in there for the auth case. But we can also have an else case for the button. So let's do that. So let's put it in a div, say my6, and let's make it centered. And just have two links in here that link to the login or the register routes. So I'm just going to grab the buttons from here. So these ones, but just make it a link. So this would be a blue button. So this would be the login button. So let's paste that in. Let's change it to an anchor link. And we don't need the type. href equals, say, route login. And the name is login. See if that looks okay. Okay, it does, but it's not centered. Let's see if I add justify center here. Or does it even need to be flex? Let's see. If I change that. Okay, so that centers it. And let's add a button for signing up as well. So we can grab this one here, which is gray. And a lot of these buttons are repeated. So I probably should have made blade components for them. But for now, I'm okay with just repeating. Maybe we'll do that later on. So let's make another button here, or another link. And we don't need this SVG. And it's not a button. It's a link. And the link is to register. So let's say route, register. And I don't think we need this. And we can also get rid of this span and just say sign up. Okay, sign up. See how that looks? I actually want them to be stacked. Maybe if I add inline block, that will stack them. Okay. And we can add a margin top on this. Okay, so that's fine. So now when I log in, this form should show as before. So let me just make a new user here. Let's go ahead and register, and this should log us in as well. Okay, and the form is back. So let's work on the actual functionality of creating an idea now. And like I said, I'm going to be making use of Livewire for this. It's not really necessary, but Livewire does add some nice features like disabling the button when you submit. And you can do things like real-time validation if you want to do that. So let's make a Livewire component. PHP Artisan make Livewire. Let's call it create idea. Okay. And let's first move everything in the form. So everything in the auth directive here. Let's grab this and let's put it in Livewire create idea. Okay. So let's open that up, create idea, and let's paste that in. Let's make sure to re-indent. And this should still render like before. Okay. Let's open up the create idea class and let's add some state here. So what do we need? So if you take a look at our form, we have 3 fields. We have a title, a category, and a description. So let's start with that. So let's say public title. Let's add one for a category. And let's default the category to 1 because that's the first one selected here. And let's say description. Okay. So let's save that and let's go to our form again. And let's add the action we want to perform here. So let's say wire submit, and let's prevent the default action. And let's call a method called create idea, which we'll create in a second. And let's add the wire models on those fields. So the first one is the title. So this is this one here. So let's put it first actually. Say wire model, and I'm gonna use defer so it doesn't make any requests until we hit the submit button. Okay. And let's do the same for the others. So let's add it for the select right here. And this one will be category. So it's going to update these values. Actually, we have to grab these values from our categories table. So let's do that. Let me add the wire model first on this one. So wire model defer equals description. So now let's add the categories here. So I'm going to loop over them and we'll pass them in a second. But since we're in the view already, we can work on it here. Say for each. And we'll grab the categories as category. Let's put this up. And the value is going to be the ID of the category. So this is what's going to be stored in the database. So that's going to be the category ID. And the thing that shows up in the select box is the name. So it's a category name. Okay. And to grab the categories, we can pass them in through the controller if you want. So in our idea controller, we can pass it through here and then pass it to our Livewire component, or we can just grab it directly from the Livewire component. So let's take that route. Create idea, and we can just grab it from here. So let's just say categories, and we can just say category all. Okay, let's import category, and hopefully this works. So let's see if it's grabbing the categories from our database. So right now this is hard-coded, but if I refresh, it should grab them from the database, and it looks like it does. Cool. Okay, now we can work on the create idea. So let's work on that. So remember, I added this wire submit prevent, and we're calling a create idea method on the class. So let's do that. Let's add it here. Say create idea. And let's go ahead and create that idea. So we have idea, create. So what does an idea need? So if we look at our database, it needs a user ID, category ID, status ID, title, and description. So user ID is going to be the logged in user, auth ID, okay? And also we should wrap this in a auth check to make sure the user is logged in. So let's do that as well. So if auth check, then perform this action. But if not, then we can just abort. And what's 403? I believe it's forbidden. Or we can do response. I believe there are constants here. So let me import the response. I believe it's on the Symfony response though. So let's go into that. Let's go into the Symfony response. And there it is. So we can do response forbidden, HTTP forbidden. Okay, let's do that. Okay, back to here. Let's make sure to import idea. And the next field is category ID. And that is bound to our select inputs. So we can just do this category. Next is our status ID. And by default, it should be the open status, which is 1. Title, again, is bound to our input box. So this title. And the last one is description. and this description. Okay. So there's no success message yet. We'll add that in a second. Actually, let me just add that now. So there are a few ways to do this, but I'm just going to stick with a flash message. So we can do session flash, let's say success message. And I'll just say idea was added successfully. ESS, okay. So we also want to reset the form. So Livewire provides this reset method. So let's make use of that. And I also want to reload the page. So a lot of times you don't want to do that, but in this case I do. So I'm just going to redirect back. Say return, redirect. We can just say idea.index. Okay, so let's see if I did everything correctly, and let's try to create a new idea here on the form. So I'm logged in. Let's say Andre's new idea, say category 3. This is a description for Andre's awesome idea. Okay, so let's see if this works. Submit, and it looks like it does work. The form is reset. I forgot to add the success message, but it's not showing up here because I think the order in which the ideas are showing. But if I go to the last page, hopefully it shows up there. So it should be one more. And there it is. So it does work. So let's switch up the order first. So I want the latest first. So that would be in our idea controller. Yeah, so here we can change the order. So I believe we can do latest, or we can do something like this, latest ID, or we can do order by ID and descending. Whatever you think is more readable. I'll stick with this. So now if I refresh, this should change, and our new idea should be on the first page. So let me go there. And now it's showing the new idea first. Okay, let's make sure to add the success message. So back to our create idea form. Let's put it underneath here. So let's make a new div. I believe I have a snippet here for the success message. Okay, so it just checks if there's a session variable called success message and outputs it. Let's just change the classes here. So let's just make it green and give it a margin top. So let's see if that works now. Let's refresh. New idea, category 4. Awesome idea, and let's try this. Okay, so it does show there. So we'll polish this up a bit later on. But one thing I want to add here is maybe make it disappear after 2 or 3 seconds, or however long you want. So let's quickly do that with Alpine. So let's make this an Alpine component as well. And we do need some state here. So let's say xData equals, say, is visible, is true by default. And we can make use of xinit to run some JavaScript when this component is initialized. So let's do that. Let's put it on its own line because we need a few lines here. And we can just make use of set timeout in JavaScript. And that takes a callback. And let's just say is visible is false after however long you want. So let's say 5 seconds. And we can add the transition here. So x show transition. Let's make the duration 1 second, so it fades out. Equals is visible. Okay. So let's see if this works. So it should disappear after 5 seconds. Testing Alpine. Testing Alpine transition. Okay, so submit. Okay, see if it disappears after 5 seconds. and it does not. So what am I doing wrong here? So yeah, I have a few typos here. Duration, and this should be x-show. So let's try that one more time. Again, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, disappear, and it does. Cool. So again, we'll polish that up in a future video, but for now I'm okay with this. So yeah, this should work on the show page as well. So if I click here, the form still appears here. So let's try this out again. Again, show page, and it should redirect back to the index page. And it does. Cool. I totally forgot about validation, so let's quickly do that. So back to our create idea class. Let's add a rule set here. So we can do protected rules equals an array. So let's say title. It's required. And let's say minimum 4 characters. And let's add other ones for category. So this is required and it should be an integer. Okay. And description can be the same as title, required and 4 characters. Okay. So now let's add a semicolon and let's make sure to validate here. So this validate. Okay, so let's save that. And in our view, we can just add the error directive. So let's put it for title here underneath the input. Let's say error title. And then let's make it a p tag. Say text red, text extra small. Oops, that should be a dot. And let's give it a margin top of 1, okay? And we can just output the error message here. And we can do the same for the others as well. So let's close that. And let's grab this. Let's add it for category as well. So let's put it here. And it should be category. And for the text area, let's just put it underneath the text area. And it should be description. So let's see if that works. So if I submit, there we go. And I'm okay with that. So let's just make sure that this still works. Obviously it should. And you can do real-time validation if you want to, but I'm deferring everything so there's only one request when we hit submit. Okay. So obviously you can add browser validation here as well, but always make sure to have server-side validation. So we can add that if you want. You can just add required here. And also for the description. Now it's browser validation. So if we hit submit, the browser takes over. I have to refresh. There we go. Okay, so now we can make a commit. I actually made a commit without doing the validation, so I had to undo it. So let's go ahead and do it again. So git add. What episode is this? 15. Git commit. Episode 15. Create ideas.